Hey guys, Freddy with Poor Man Mods here. I've got a short video for you guys today. Hopefully it's short. It's been a while since I've done anything regarding the 1UZ swap in this IS300. I finally got the air conditioning to work in this car, and that was something I was very close to giving up on, but I finally got it to work. In this video, I'm not going to show you step by step on what I did to make it work, but in this video, I'm just going to talk about what I did, the wiring that I did, the connections I made, and whatnot to get the air conditioning to work. And hopefully, if you're having trouble getting your air conditioning to work with your UZ swapped IS300, or maybe any swap, maybe some of the information that I talk about in this video is helpful. We're gonna be going over the wiring diagrams and just some very simple connections that I made to make it work. It was a total mind scrambler figuring out how to get this all to work. But now that it's done, it's pretty simple. I didn't have to add any relays or anything. So let's talk about what I did, and hopefully it's helpful to at least one of you. This is a 1UZ VVTi out of a GS400 in a 02 IS300. One thing that I did, but I regret doing, is I removed the OEM IS300 ECU entirely. I don't have it anymore, got rid of it. Now, it did free up room for this rat's nest to go in here, but it would have made things a little simpler if I kept the stock ECU, because that gets rid of a lot of the CAN bus or multiplex stuff. And that's where you run into issues with stuff like the air conditioning. So I finally got the air conditioning to work, and let me show you what I did. So one thing I purchased is this little box. This is a CAN signal converter. The instructions that come with it are pretty much extremely hard to follow. They don't make any sense. They were not very helpful at all. I'm not going to be of any help if you have any questions for this guy about your coolant temperature gauge or your speedometer or anything like that. I did not use this for that. I am running an AEM water temperature gauge right in there on my dash, so I was not too concerned about getting this to work with the factory temperature gauge. And the speedometer, I got that to work. I talk about that in a previous video. So the only thing I'm using this little expensive box for is air conditioning. And I'm going to show you what all I did to make this work. It was complicated to figure out, but hopefully what I'm going to explain in this video is very, very simple. We only have 4 wires connected to this CAN inverter thingy-majig. We got our power and ground wire right here. The red wire is going into B+, that black is going into E1. So the B+ is our battery positive or switched ignition, and the E1 is our ground or earth. I hooked this up to a switched power source, not straight to battery, and I just chose a regular ground to connect it to. The instructions tell you to mount this and connect this to stuff in the gauge cluster. I don't know why. You can put this anywhere, and mine is going to live in this rat's nest here. So inside this rat's nest, I connected it to a switched ignition power source, and then took the ground and grounded it to this ground here, which is a common ground for a bunch of stuff in here. Very simple. B goes to power, E goes to earth, all right? This is the part that just made absolutely no sense because it seemed too simple to be true, but it ended up working out. It sounds weird, funky, but it worked. So this MPX wire, this is our red wire here. The MPX wire is what communicates with the multiplex or the CAN system in this car. And you take this wire and you T-tap it into any CAN or multiplex wire. I'll show you on the diagram an example. So we're looking at the IS300 wiring diagram here. This is in the air conditioning section. And here's an example. See how it says MPX1? It's a multiplex wire. If you go through this diagram, you'll see a ton of wires that say MPX, and this is your CAN bus system. So you can connect it to any of them. Just find any wiring you want, whether it's in the gauge cluster or in this box, anywhere. Find a wire on this diagram that's labeled MPX1 or MPX2. There's a ton of them. And all you have to do is take this red wire, and just use one of these wire taps. That's all you have to do. It is super simple. And then that allows this box to communicate with the multiplex system of the car. It's actually that simple. After doing that, it allows this thing to see when you hit the AC button on the dash, it'll see through the multiplex system that signal. And then what happens, this thing, it came set up and it said output number 2 was for air conditioning and output number 1 was for our fan controller. Our fans are currently controlled by our Spittronics ECU for cooling, like water temperature wise, not air conditioning. So when the Spittronics sees a certain temperature, the fans kick on. So we don't need this to control our fans for engine cooling, but we still need to get the fans to turn on for the air conditioning. So here's what we did. This output 2, when you hit the AC button on the dash, this little box sends a ground signal through this black wire. When the air conditioning button is off, for whatever reason, this is putting out a 12-volt signal. Not necessarily a bad thing. I'm sure you could figure out a way to use that, but what this does, when you press the AC button, it is grounding this circuit. So, it sends a ground signal. Here's where it got to be a little bit of a head scratcher. The air conditioning clutch, in order to engage, needs a 12-volt signal to engage that clutch. The wiring for my electric fans with the Spittronics ECU, that circuit is triggered by a ground. When the ECU gets to a certain temperature, it grounds that circuit and turns the fans on. So we have opposites here, needing power here, needing a ground here. And you need the fans to run at the same time as the AC compressor. So, looked into the diagram here. This section of the AC diagram, this relay right here, AC compressor relay, if you look closely, this relay gets activated by a ground. The ECU is switching a ground to trigger the AC compressor relay. So, what that means is we can use the ground signal from this little box and cut this wire here, this LW wire, that's a blue wire with a white stripe. If we take our ground signal from that little box and connect it to right here, this blue wire with a white stripe, when we press the AC button, it'll ground this circuit, closing this relay and sending power to the clutch. That relay is right here. So, unbolt this, take the bottom out, and you will see a blue wire with a white stripe going to this relay. This wire right there. Cut that wire, and the wire that, and the side of the wire that's going to this relay, you take your output wire here and connect that to the blue wire with a white stripe. So that way, when you press the button on the dash, this sends a ground signal to the relay, it triggers it, and since the rest of our system is intact, it sends a 12-volt signal to the clutch to engage the compressor. But since my fan circuit was a switched ground by the Spittronics ECU, I just took this ground wire, this ground signal, crimped another wire onto it, and took it to that same connection. So, when I hit the AC button, this is a ground signal. It grounds the fan circuit, and then it sends a ground here, and it triggers the fan and the AC compressor at the same time. Now that's all fine and dandy, but that means that if the car has no refrigerant or anything, if you hit the AC button, the fan turns on, the compressor engages, and you could totally destroy your compressor if you don't have any lubricant or refrigerant, right? So I thought about that. That connector that you see right there is the connector for the AC compressor. The only wire I'm using on it is the pink wire, which sends the 12-volt signal to the clutch. The other two wires are sensing wires for the ECU, which I no longer have, and they're no longer needed. So I cut this pink wire in the middle, and then I ran it to over here. Down here, that guy right there is the dual pressure switch for the AC system. That switch down there is this guy right here. So when you see a switch like this, that is open. It's an open switch. So if you were to take that switch out of the plumbing of the air conditioning, it would make it an open circuit. So this switch is open when it's below 31 PSI or above 455 PSI. It is a huge window. So if you have over 31 PSI of refrigerant in this system, this circuit closes. So if you had a huge leak and you leaked all of your refrigerant out, this switch would then become open, and it would tell the ECU originally that, hey, this is an open circuit right here. Don't turn the AC on, and it wouldn't work. But we don't have a computer now. So what I did, this pink wire here, I cut it in the middle, took one side, and ran it to this blue wire with a yellow stripe. Then I took the other side of this pink wire and ran it to this white wire with a black stripe. And so that way, my compressor can only turn on when I hit the button, and then when this switch is satisfied and it sees at least 31 PSI. If it drops below 31 PSI, the circuit opens and I hit the switch, and it will not send power to the clutch because it cannot complete the circuit. Hopefully you can follow that. One very important thing to note about the wiring of this pressure switch: there are two white wires with a black stripe, and they are not the same. You must use this one, not this one. When the system reaches 31 PSI and the switch closes, this white wire with a black stripe has continuity with the blue wire and yellow stripe. This one does not. I'm not sure what this one is used for, but it does not complete the circuit. So you must use this one, not this one. Okay? So, to sum things up, to get this air conditioning to work with this swap without the factory ECU, I installed this little converter multiplex box thingy from All for Swap, whatever you want to call this thing. Connected the B+ pin to switched ignition, the E1 pin to ground. Then you take this MPX pin, put your wire in there, and you can T-tap or tap that wire into any MPX wire anywhere in the car. It could be in here, behind the cluster, but it's got to say MPX1 or MPX2. Then, once this is on the multiplex network, when you hit the AC button, it'll see that, send a ground signal out of here. And I have this ground signal going to this AC relay to trigger it. And I also have it going to my fan relays to turn the fan on and the AC compressor at the same time. But the pink wire that comes out of this relay to go to the compressor to give it power, I run that through this dual pressure switch right here. And it'll only let the signal through to the clutch if it sees 31 to 455 PSI of coolant. And after doing all that wiring, I was finally able to put a vacuum on the system, fill it with coolant, and now it works. I am so happy that it works. I'm really, really glad I did not give up on this. I know this can be hard and confusing to follow. I know this is a bit of a rat's nest, but I hope the information that I talked about in this video can help at least someone out, whether it's with this swap and air conditioning or with another car. pick yourself up one of these diagrams. Just literally Google search your year, make, and model and factory service manual or repair manual, and you should be able to find something like this. This is absolutely worth its weight in gold or more. You may or may not need this, depending if you kept your stock ECU or not, but I got rid of it, but I probably should not have gotten rid of it. But now my air conditioning works, and really the only thing that does not work with this car is the ambient air temperature sensor. But I don't care about that, because the thing looks freaking sick and drives awesome. And now the air conditioning is cool, and I couldn't be happier. So thanks for watching this video. I hope this helped at least somebody. And yeah, good luck with your swap, and maybe I'll see you in the next video. Bye.